Hello there, this is Kevin. This is the Yoga Life podcast. Welcome, or welcome back. If you've already listened, thanks for coming back. And if you're new, I hope you like it. If you do, leave a review on iTunes, that'd be fantastic. This podcast is brought to you by some sponsors, 3 to be precise. The first one is Om Apparel, men's clothing brand that want to encourage more men to do yoga. Yoga is reflected in everything they do, from being kinder to the environment by using sustainable recycled fabrics to their recycled paper packaging and focus on men's health. Their fabrics are all eco-certified because our planet can't afford more irresponsible manufacturing. Go to om.com/#TYLP and check out their full range of eco-active wear for men. Put stuff in your basket, go to checkout, and then you get 15% off if you use the promo code Kevin. So that's ohmme.com/#TYLP, promo code Kevin at checkout for 15% off. I've got my eye on some slate coloured Voyager trousers. Got loads of pairs of them, so wear them all the time. So check them out. Next sponsor is 108 Asana Yoga Sequencing Cards by Yogaroo. If you're a yoga practitioner, you're trying to develop your home practice without going online and just copying a class, I recommend you check these guys out. Ruth designs these beautiful cards that give you all your alignment cues, your level guides, your anatomy coding, and your English to Sanskrit translations. Simply go to yogaroo.ie, choose your cards, your deck of cards, put in the promo code Kevin for 10% off. That's yogaroo.ie, promo code Kevin for 10% off your 108 Asana Yoga Sequencing cards. Third and finally, small changes. No online offering just as yet, but they are a whole food store close to me, close to my heart. I've had their owner on here, Pada, a few weeks ago. And I'm really making an effort now to be more and more conscious of my consumption and my waste. And this is what small change is all about. That's their ethos, to make small changes for a big difference. So if you go to smallchanges.ie, if you're in Drumcondra or the soon to be the Glasnevin area, go and check out their store and support local. If you're looking to handstand, why not come to my handstand workshop on July 6th in Yoga Hub, Castle Knock? If you're looking to become a yoga teacher, come to why not? While you're at it, you listen to a yoga podcast, you like yoga, become a teacher, or at least inquire about it perhaps and see what it's all about. You can come to my open day, which is happening when is it happening? Saturday, 27th of July in Yoga Hub, Castle Knock again. It's a free event. You come along, ask questions. You're going to meet other potential trainees. And all information is going to be on kevinboyleyoga.ie. And if you've got any questions, please let me know. Without further ado, let's get Devin on. I met Devin in Bali. He was actually the first ever guest on the podcast back in the Dize. And now I actually got a chance to meet him. So I made it a priority when I was in Bali with Rach. I said, I'm not going to do too much work. Not really going to take loads of photographs, keep it to a minimum, just to enjoy my time with her. But a priority was to meet Devin Kelley, have a private with him and do the podcast, which went really, really well. We had good fun and I learned a ton. I hope you do too. Here's Devin. Can I call you Dev or Devin?
Yeah, Dev is okay. Devin, yeah, my dad calls me Dev, so.
Okay, all right. What's up, Dev?
What's up, Dad?
How are you?
I'm feeling great. It's good to be in Bali.
Yeah. We just to set some context, we just finished a private, the one-to-one. I finished with Dev, and we did it in Nirvana Strength, which is an amazing facility. And the focus for today was handstand press, and I don't do many privates myself. They're quite intense, aren't they, privates, because your proximity to the person, and sometimes the person is expecting quite a lot. So when you've got a private, what's your process for assessing like what the person needs?
For me at this point, it's probably more organic. Like I'll try to have a structure in mind based on what they say they want, and then that might change based on what they do. You know, like I'll run them through some basics. Like even when I'm running you through the wrist warm up, I'm watching your patterns. How much awareness do you have? How much do you respond to my cues? How well are you able to make adjustments? And based on those sort of both intuitive and sometimes measured assessments, I change the strategy. So for me, I guess it's hard to describe the process because I've been doing it for many years now. So I don't really have like a structured thing for privates because I find them to be so individual. I try to gauge the person more intuitively nowadays.
What I really liked about, actually we stick our headphones on, what I really liked about your approach, because now you'll be able to hear me really clearly.
Oh yes.
Yeah. And also, anyway, what I really liked about your approach was, for example, the wrist warm up. You said, what's your current wrist warm up? And I took you through what I do, and then you showed me other things, which sounds so simple, but you could have just launched into these are the wrist warm ups. And if I do most of them myself already, it's redundant for me. I really like that. That was really good. Another thing is having the confidence to. I was taking notes on my phone, which was a little bit laboured, and it was kind of taking time. And you allowed me to video you, which is so good because I understand sometimes the video it interrupts things, interrupts the interaction. So I didn't want to be constantly videoing, but it does help because when I was making notes, I was just like, I already don't understand my notes.
Right, as a review tool, it can be.
As a review tool.
Useful, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's also about time, time constraint. That's one of the most challenging things I find about privates is like when people want to hire me for just an hour, it's like I have to think about, okay, what are the things that I can do and what approaches can I take to have the biggest impact in that time in a way that sort of carries on most sustainably, long term for them. Like what am I going to give them that equals the broadest insights and the most applicable insights without being so vague and without being so, without being so vague that it's not concrete enough for them to actually do anything. Because I could sit there and talk principles the entire time, and that would be one end of the spectrum of being so broadly applicable that you could just unpack that for years and years from 1 hour. But then I find that people are detached from that. If it's too abstract, too conceptual, too cerebral, you could probably relate to that with your experience of actually doing the handstand entrances, whereas if I had just talked about it or spent more time explaining the methodology as opposed to just spending a couple minutes on it, would have been a different impact.
Yeah, completely. And also I like the way that I noticed actually one thing you do, Devin, is like when you say something, you look quite intently at me afterwards to see if I got it. And maybe that's through working such a long time in a country where English is a second language, where you have to read more their physical cues. Are they actually understanding it, or are they just saying they're understanding it? And then another thing you did was to ask questions, not just, do you know what I mean? Because if you say, do you know what I mean? People go, yeah. And it tells you nothing. Yeah. But then you actually asked me probing questions around that subject to then see if I understood it, which is really good because I knew coming into this private, I was like, okay, I'm going to eat well this morning. I'm not going to drink too much coffee. I'm also going to have my mind straight. I was just listening to
and then when you came in totally plastered, I was just so surprised. I said, okay,
let's party. I was like this morning I was listening to loads of philosophy, and I was getting into that mindset of like, okay, be introspective, ask questions. And another thing I really liked is that your use of storytelling.
Okay.
So because people like stories. There's different types of learners out there, but when you told the story about the weightlifter and the girl who was going through the motions and then her coach, it doesn't matter who the coach was, where it happened, but it's the tale itself. And it's the lessons that learnt from the tale. But I could build characters in my mind, and then I was that character.
I see what you mean. Yeah,
and that worked well.
Yeah, that's one thing. Like for example, in the most recent, the online teaching course I did, the Teaching That Moves People. One of the primary subjects I did that I covered in terms of teaching style, which was in the second segment, was all about using metaphor and storytelling as a teaching tool. And I find that it's so powerful because I mean, number one, people's attention spans are already getting shorter, but stories and metaphors are one thing where I find that no matter how short a person's attention span is, generally if a story has characters, has a plot line, something that's happening on a timeline, it's easy for them to pay attention. It's easy for them to relate, and it's super memorable. Even for myself, I mean, I have I'm not bragging, but I have like a superhuman long attention span. Like I can just focus on one thing for just an absurd amount of time without taking a break. And it doesn't bother me. Like I've never fallen asleep during a movie. I've never fallen asleep. I have a hard time falling asleep at night for this reason. Something to look into. But even for me, it's like what I remember and what I take away from events and from teachers is all about like the metaphors they use, the stories they use, the jokes they tell. And that kind of, those lessons taught me like, okay, if I really want to, I mean, I'm not an entertainer, but I now understand the value of entertaining people in this way to hold their attention and to like you said, I mean, you found yourself in the position of the character in the story. If I made this girl up or not, doesn't matter. Which I didn't. It's actually a real story. But I actually wasn't there in person. It was just a video I was watching. But putting you there in that moment, it helps you relate to it helps ground the technique in actual setting and with actual people. And otherwise we're just talking concepts. We're just talking abstract. And for some people, that's great. For some people like who think highly abstractly, that's wonderful. But for a lot of people, for most people, it doesn't land.
But also it breaks the rhythm of the dialogue, because if you're constantly teach, probe to see if they understand, do it, then you've got this thing, it can get a bit monotonous. Okay, what's the next drill? We're doing next drill. But when you throw in the story, it breaks the rhythm. And that breaking the rhythm, I think, keeps people attention.
Could be, yeah.
I think personally it did for me. But when we were leaving the private, this guy came over and he was wanted to speak to you, and he was talking about, you can move it via the handle if you like this, is it if it's too high?
Oh, okay,
yeah,
cool, yeah.
Like you like that, yeah. This geezer
clearly a pro.
Nah, this is a bit of a ghetto setup, but it does the job. So this geezer come over, and he was a little bit kind of apprehensive about interrupting us and asking about the workshop. And when he came over, I think his question to you can clarify this, was how physical will the workshop be?
Yeah.
Because with respect to him, he didn't look like an athlete. And I mean, you can't judge a book by its cover, but you get certain signals. And I think he seemed like concerned that that he wouldn't be able to take a break, and that you'd be maybe driving at home in terms of the
yeah, he seemed concerned that it was going to be too physically challenging. For sure. That's the vibe I got.
Basically, yeah. For a start, how do you reassure someone like that?
You don't. For me, it's not about reassuring anybody or providing them with an additional narrative. I try to be as clear as possible about my intention, and I try to help clarify in a way that I think they will understand. So I try to meet somebody where they are in terms of where I think their interpretation level is or where they're coming from. I do my best to relate to them culturally, personally. But granted that, I try to just be as specific as I can. And if I sense somebody has a fear, I don't find it's my job, or I don't feel compelled to put a Band-Aid over that or to assuage or mollify their fears in any way. Like that's, if anything, I think it's part of my job to reflect that back at them and show them like, oh, you're afraid of this. You don't want to confront this. Okay, well, then actually maybe this would be good maybe I might even, it's not lying to them, but I might exaggerate in a way that makes it seem like this is something that you might have to confront if you come to my workshop, right? Even if they actually won't on the level that I'm putting out there. Even if they won't have to on that level. So I think about it in those terms. I'm not interested in selling workshops. I'm not interested in selling my courses. I'm interested in teaching people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're asking him to kind of be introspective, to say, ask himself, why has he created this narrative in his head that he is, for want of a better word, afraid of the physicality of the workshop?
Yeah, I'm not outright asking him that, obviously. Like I'm not asking him like, oh, it seems like you're afraid of this. But in some cases, if that feels appropriate, I would. But I'm reflecting that uncomfortability or that fear back at him by just stating simply what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, there's going to be, it's all physical. Like you noticed how I said it's all physical,
Mm-hmm.
but we're using that physical component. We're using the physical practice as a medium for understanding deeper learning principles that can be applied to any learning process.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, cause that's really what I'm doing.
Mm.
But then but the way I phrase it, then he's forced to confront like, oh, okay, if I come, this is going to be a physical practice. Like that's what it is. It's a physical movement workshop. So I don't want to, I don't want to take that potential confrontation away from people that could be valuable for him in the future, because if he has a resistance to coming to a physical event for that reason, if I try to take that away from him and say like, no, don't worry, brother, it's all going to be fine. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to fear about that. Then in making that decision to come to my workshop, he never has the opportunity to confront that resistance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. But the delivery is so important, because I was there when the conversation happened, and I just walked along with you and just there. And
Kevin was squinting his eyes in the corner and wringing his hands, watching,
like your agent or something,
taking some secret notes.
Yeah. No. What I noticed was, for a start, your Instagram is like you're in the mountains in China. Yeah, like some monk.
I get that impression a lot from people. They say like, yeah.
You have like maybe 3 pairs of pants that you wear. They're all black or grey, and like, you know, or green. It's kind of army color, and you're there, and you're doing these routines that are so methodical and they're, you know, very disciplined, and you're eating duck eggs and rice or something, I don't know, and 5 hamburgers, and like quite
small humans who happen to wander across my path.
And
unfortunate souls.
And so this presence, or this kind of not like kind of a facade, seems like quite serious, quite intimidating. But then when I met you today, it was like you're smiling. I was like, I haven't actually seen him smile much. Yeah. I don't see you, like, he's smiling, what's up, bro? We had a bit of a laugh. And then when this guy we're talking about was talking to you, you were talking to him, I was watching your face. Yeah. I was watching how, like, your eyebrows were up, you know, you were kind of like, hands were out, and it was all very welcoming, you know, because he was a bit apprehensive. And I think the content is really important in terms of what you say to him, obviously, but then how you say it is equally important, because you can't get that across in Instagram, you know. Yeah, that's the video.
Ask my girlfriend. Yeah, she'll tell you how I say something is perhaps even way more important than what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's a skill in itself. But I wanted to talk to you about that, because you do, through social media, come across quite stoic, quite serious in your nature. But I went all the way back to your posts when your first few posts you did on Instagram, and it was very much peace and love, light-hearted, hashtag this if you like it, share it with a friend, this type of stuff. And I've noticed there's been a change. Now, my sister has said to me that I've got way more serious as I've gotten older. And I'm wondering, first I want to ask you, because I don't know anything about your childhood, Say if I read a school report by one of your teachers when you were 7, what would it say?
When I was 7?
Or around that age?
Yeah. What grade? I have to relate that to like a grade or something. So when I was 5, I was in kindergarten. 6 is first grade. 7 is second grade. Oh, second grade? Probably. I think they would call me precocious. That's being a little bit arrogant maybe, but I think they would call me precocious and maybe a little bit rebellious. I've got like kind of like at that point I had like an anti-authority kind of thing going on. Even at that young age, I didn't like to be told what to do, especially by people who I didn't respect or consider to be respectable. But also easy to make friends. Like I was easy to make friends at that point. And I was highly protective over my friends. Like I remember getting in fights on the playground because I didn't like how some of the older kids were treating people who I liked, or like my friends. Like there was this one kid, I remember his name, Aaron Jones. and he was wearing this like this Christmassy ass looking sweater, and it was a hideous sweater, but he had it on inside out. And the other, like some of the older kids, and like, you know, when you're in second grade, it's like the fourth graders are like, whoa, those are the big kids. And some of the fourth graders were teasing him about his inside out sweater. And I just remember getting so upset, like, you know, that burning feeling in your stomach. It was my first like kind of experience of like, wow, feels wrong to me. And they were bullying him. And so like, I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I said something to them, and they ended up cornering me against a wall. Like there were like 3 or 4 of them, and they're much bigger than me physically. And so they, you know, I try to get up and they push me back down against the wall. I hit my head again, the back of my head against a brick wall, I remember. And they're like cornering me there. I can't get up. I can't physically do anything. I'm totally helpless. And so that was only one instance, but that happened more than one time. I felt very protective over my friends, and ended up getting in confrontations because of it. That feeling has never really changed, but I tend to allow more space now for people to make their own, like to confront things on their own, because I want to support their growth in that way. And it's not like I couldn't step in or that I don't want to, but it's more like I'm thinking sort of bigger perspective. But yeah, anyway, so that was kind of a tangent, but I understand your question, like that.
So what I'm getting at is like, I think people go in cycles or phases. It's almost like we have different personalities as at different stages in our life.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm wondering, like, what stages have you gone through, and what has caused those stages, those changes even?
Yeah, I remember the initial part of your question was like, there's been a change in my disposition and attitude on social media.
Yeah.
And it seems more serious now. Ironically, I would describe it in the opposite way. I feel way less serious now. Okay. Subjectively. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like I don't take things as seriously. I have a stronger introspective practice. Like I make more jokes interpersonally, but not publicly. Like I don't try to be funny on my page. Like, whereas before, like it's interesting because when I found yoga, I went through this phase of opening, really. It was like, you know, maybe Baron Baptiste and his students might call it like blowing the lid off your practice and resistance and all these ways that you're hiding in front of yourself. And so I went through the process of, you know, introspective practice. I was introduced to introspective practice through some students of Baron Baptiste at a studio in North Carolina. And it was like that. It was like I started to become aware of all these ways that I was being reserved and trying to put on a mask in front of other people and holding myself back because I was afraid of what other people might think of me, or afraid of what I might think of me if I encountered certain results. And when that happened, it was like it went to the opposite extreme. I thought, you know, I was telling myself that somebody who is involved in this kind of practice and this kind of expression of yoga not only needed to be open, but also needed to appear open and lighthearted and you know, gregarious is the right word, in front of other people. And so like that whole phase, if I look back on that, it's kind of an embarrassment to me when I read my old captions and stuff. It's a cringeworthy thing for me. I cringe when I read it, and it's because it wasn't authentic. It's because I was putting something on because I thought I needed to appear open, and I needed to appear relatable, and I needed to appear lighthearted, and I needed to appear accessible. And I wanted to show people, I didn't want to be misinterpreted, so I used a lot of emojis and to show people that I was being inviting and happy. And the deeper my introspective practice went, the more I became aware of that and started to just talk straight about what I meant. And I started to leave a lot of the yogi language behind, the new age spiritual language that I had acquired, not even really yogi language, but and just speak like myself again, you know, but now in a new way, because I had a new kind of awareness of the motives behind my behavioral traits. So yeah, I mean, ironically, kind of a serious explanation, but it was just you know, people see me as more serious now, but I just feel like all that was bullshit. It's sad in a lot of ways because it did mislead so many people. Like I remember posting this photo, for example, on Instagram. It was like before and after thing, like back when I was vegan 5 years ago or whatever. And here is me now. And in the old photo, I mean, it was a terrible photo, and I was looking not healthy, but I was smiling. I had this big sort of ear to ear grin. And one of the most common comments I got on that photo was like, yo, you look great now. You look healthy now, but man, you looked so happy back then. Like, where's your smile go? And they don't know that was a total facade. Like I was totally faking that. Like I thought about that every time I took a picture. I was like, how do I have this kind of like authentic looking ear to ear grin? Like I'm totally open and enjoying life. I was trying to appear that way, but people don't have that kind of insight. They just see it on the surface and they think, oh, lighthearted then, serious now. But it's actually reversed. You know, it's actually opposite.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's a good question. Thanks for asking that. I hadn't thought about that much. So.
Cool, man. Well, you touched it there about introspection, and I'm interested in this topic because I think that I think from a teaching perspective, I want to find out what's motivating me. Yeah. Because I certain things that I've been really lucky that the last. This year has been really good for me, and like a lot of good things are happening in terms of work-wise, and my main thing is don't fuck it up, okay? But what I'm trying to draw myself back to is why is this important for me, and why am I telling myself certain things? Why do I think I'm going to fuck it up?
Okay.
Exactly. Why do I think that? I mean, when I spoke to you last time, because we did a podcast a couple months ago, me and Devin, but the recording didn't record properly, unfortunately. One of the things we talked about was, ended up, Devin was kind of counselling me.
for a couple minutes, yeah.
I was like, my father didn't hug me enough. But one of the things was, why do I have this narrative in my head like I'm a fraud? Why do I... And it's this cycle, and I keep saying it. And no matter when people give me a compliment, I put it down and I brush it to the side, and that is this weakness. You know, I think it's me repeating a pattern that is not helping me, and I need to change. Not need to change. It would serve me to actually ask myself, why am I saying this? Having this talk in my mind, and how could I change that? And what I want to get to is, when people come to your workshops, how do you talk to them, or how do you incorporate introspection in your workshops in terms of teaching it?
Two ways, I think, that are worth mentioning here. A lot of it I can't really describe. It's very intuitive, like I said. It's just situational based on the person. But two kind of principles that I operate on. One comes from, actually it's funny because I've read just countless works of Nietzsche and just, I don't know how many hours poring over his pieces. But one line that stuck with me in terms of friendship and what friendship means is, he said at one point, I don't know if this is the right phrasing or not, but he said something like, friendship is often being a hard cot to sleep on. And what that means to me is that if somebody comes to you with a vulnerability, or they express a vulnerability, or you see it in them, like this is what I just talked about before, it's a lot about not trying to fix that, or trying to assuage it, or trying to cushion that for them. Sometimes it's allowing them enough comfortability and reassurance to be able to rest in that for a moment, and then eventually to confront it. But if you become too much of a soft, cushy bed for them, you end up crippling them. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's how I relate to that, that aspect. So I try to be encouraging and open enough that people feel comfortable expressing themselves in front of me, and comfortable having those confrontations in my presence and around other people in my workshops. But I try not to be too cushy. Intentionally, sometimes I'll push a little bit of confrontation on them. So that's one out of two.
Because, sorry, go on, and the second one?
Yeah, I can remember it. You go ahead.
No, go. I don't want to stop you. Go on.
Yeah, I guess the second one would be more about listening to fine cues that I've learned to pick up on over time. like my listening skills, I think, are probably the most useful there that I've developed through the narrative excavation practice, just one-on-one coaching in small groups and working with people, just listening for so many hours and listening to how they just, I call them indicators, narrative indicators. And there's certain like categories of words and phrases that people use that will indicate certain narratives over time. And so I'll ask them questions, like key kind of questions and phrases that will elicit those indicators from them. And then based on those indicators, I can decide what questions I ask them from there. And the questions I ask them situationally based on what they say are questions that will probe them to see the narratives that they're telling themselves about themselves that are getting in the way of their progress. And it's like, my goal at the end of that interaction is for them to look at those narratives and be like, oh yeah, okay, I see how I'm making that up, and I see how that's standing in the way of me moving forward.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
But then you must have, I mean, you think about your workshops is, I was looking at Nirvana Strength and all their workshops and the titles of their workshops.
Sure.
And yours seems a little bit more abstract, for want of a better word, a bit more, I don't like the word vague, but it seems more abstract than Yuri, who has hand balance and acrobatics workshop. Okay, boom, hand balance and acrobatics. I know what I'm going to get.
Yep.
Whatever. But with yours, I imagine that the spectrum of people, the spectrum of people that come to your workshop is a lot broader.
Yes.
You know, in terms of the persona, of the profile of people. Have you? So, would you say that's a fair assumption?
I think so. Broader in what way?
Do you get teachers coming?
People,
or do you get people who are like acrobats? Sorry. Do you get people who are out of shape and are looking for more of a lecture?
I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say that the people in that way who show up at my workshops are more diverse. But I would say the kind of people who show up are distinct in a certain way because of I've learned that if I advertise in a certain way, then I will get a certain kind of person who shows up. If I advertise physical skills, if I advertise impressive tricks or feats of physical accomplishment, then that's what people will come for. If I advertise a more relaxed vibe, a more restorative vibe, that's what people will come for. If I advertise more of a rehabilitation vibe, that's what people will come for. And so what I'm interested in teaching is about how to become more autonomous and critically thinking in the learning process, which is how I advertise my workshops now. I want to teach people to become more autonomous and piecing together their own practice in teaching their students, in relating to themselves and other people in practice. And so to describe how I'm doing that just requires me to be a little bit more abstract. And I don't want people coming to my workshops expecting me to completely focus on just like how to teach how to get a handstand press. I don't give a fuck if you ever get it. Like getting a handstand, what does it mean? To acquire something? It's like buying, just like, it feels like, can I buy a handstand press from you? I'm not going to sell you that. What I'm selling you is a process, and what I'm selling you is insights into the learning process that you can apply in every area of your life. That's what I care about. And if people want to learn physical skill acquisition, there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. There's a place for that. And I mean, yeah, it's awesome. It's part of the process. You have to do that at a certain point to even become involved in physical practice. But that's not the perspective I want to teach from. And I don't want to mislead people in that way. So that's why I try to be even off-putting a little bit in my workshop descriptions. Like a lot of people would see the volume of writing that I put into the workshop description and be like, I don't want to read through all that. And that's exactly what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping people give up, because I don't want the kind of students who are going to give up in reading a 2-paragraph description. Fuck them. I mean, I don't wish them anything bad, but like, it's not for you. Don't come.
Yeah, because you don't advertise much your workshops. It's not like, we only have this many spaces left and grab these free tickets. I mean, you do a bit, but I know people, including myself, that advertise their workshops way more, you know, and maybe it's the case of they have to do a little bit of work themselves, but also ask themselves, do they really want to go through the process of self-inquiry, and do they want to be introspective, as it were. I'm going to be a little bit selfish here. because I assume there's some teachers that come to your workshops,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I'm curious as to if you notice any trends, what people say in terms of challenges that they have or things they doubt themselves on. Have you noticed any trends?
I mean, yeah, but that I think would be I would describe that wholly within the context of the narrative excavation practice that I teach. I mean, the three narratives that tend to hold people back, intrapersonally, so to speak, like, you know, inside themselves, are the I'm alone, I'm not safe, or I'm in danger. That's number 2. Number 3 is I'm bad. I'm defective or flawed in some way. These 3 narratives are the big sort of impediments to people's perception of their own identity, perception of their relationships, what they can accomplish, what's possible for them in any given moment. It taints all of that if they're moving from those fear narratives. It's very hard for people to, let me put it this way. If they're moving from those fear narratives and they don't know they're doing it, it's like the old joke, like, you know, you ask a fish, how's the water today? He asks, what's water? Or, you know, so it's like they don't know that they're swimming in these narratives because it's just the air they breathe. It's just the truth as far as they're concerned. The forms of these 3 narratives. So I would say that the biggest obstacles that people face, either within my workshops or without, or in physical practice or non-physical practice, it's always, I think these are the big 3 impediments to even just being human and walking around doing stuff. Without these 3 narratives, suffering is just a catastrophically mitigated, like almost impossibly mitigated. Like you would never think that this much suffering comes from these simple, like forms of these 3 simple narratives. So that's kind of the profound perspective that originated with me studying under Baron Baptiste students, but eventually evolved into the narrative excavation practice.
I heard you mention Baron Baptiste on Nelson's podcast, The Daily Practice. Yeah. And I also heard you mention other physical practices that you've done, because to categorize it, you're doing gymnastics at the moment, gymnastic strength. That's what it looks like. All right, if I had to categorize it, choose a word.
Sure. Yeah, there are other elements to it as well. Yeah, that's part of what I do. Yeah.
Part of what you do. Yeah, and the
manifestation the physical practice takes. Yep.
Yep. Okay. Physical practice. Yeah. But also you mentioned dance, and I'm curious because what kind of dance have you done?
Mostly contemporary dance.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, I've taken some basic classes in flow work and contemporary dance, like sort of more freestyle flow work, like the stuff that you might see on like Tom Wexler's page. I've never studied with Tom, but yeah, that kind of thing. But I haven't invested as much time in dance as I would like to. It's probably an area of understudy for me, I would consider.
Because one thing I'm interested in is, say your workshops, you're teaching, so the press, I mean, from the physical point of view, I know there's a lot of philosophy or psychology behind your workshops. It's not just the physical thing.
Sure.
But, you know, you're asking people to think about how they learn and how they think, which is... but anyway, so handstand press, one arm chin up, mobility drills, work with the tennis balls, so reaction play. But one thing that maybe your practice doesn't have is martial arts or dance, something where, unless I'm wrong, where you can't control the variables, where you have to react. And I'm just wondering, is this something, because you've done some Tai Chi, martial arts or dance, is this something that you're looking to get into, or do you see it like it's something you need to explore?
Yeah, I would consider it that piece of the game very crucial, you know. So to answer the first part of the question, yes, it is part of my workshops already. Like I do a lot of interactive play in my workshops, and where, like, well, for example, I do a lot of variations of a Tai Chi Tui show. It's like push hands, where people are interacting in various kinds of scenarios and environments and trying to knock each other over and trying to respond to each other's momentum and energy and movements in a way that it encourages them to explore softness as an attribute, softness and responsiveness and reaction, speed in a certain way. Tai Chi push hands is a lot about those things. And so I explore that in a lot of unconventional ways. And that kind of partner work, I think, adds the element that you're talking about. It's a lot about because you're working with another person, they're allowed to work within certain parameters, but within those parameters, there's a lot that's unpredictable. And a lot is just sort of moment-to-moment response to things. But in terms of my own personal exploration and research, what's on my list right now that I haven't dived into as much as I want to are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Thai boxing or Muay Thai, and I think those are the top priority at the moment.
I think they got a jiu-jitsu place here.
Yeah, they do. Yeah,
I've seen that. Yeah,
yep.
Because one thing I'm interested in is addressing my my ability to deal with fear, because I've started bouldering the last year or so, and I've started back into jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
And I've realised that I've become soft. I've become like I tried boxing as well, and I was actually scared. If I'm honest, I was scared when I went to spar.
Scared to get hit, you mean?
Yeah. I was scared to get. As soon as I stepped in the ring and I didn't have anyone with me, it was just me and another person.
Yep.
I was really scared, and it made me feel. Maybe it's like my insecurities as masculine, trying to be masculine, but it made me think I shouldn't be scared of physical confrontation. And jiu-jitsu was something I stopped training because I went through a phase of being the guy who was getting choked out all the time, and I couldn't handle it. I was like, fuck this, man, it's just him. So now I've gone back into training jiu-jitsu, and I feel great because I've faced it.
Okay.
And I'm just curious for you in terms of, is that something that you're interested in, the psychology of dealing with fear and being under pressure in that way with variables you can't control?
I mean, yeah, in many ways, it's a central component to my introspection practice already. So I find maybe it's not a very strong component of my workshops or events. I'll say that for sure. Though people do face those kind of things, because we don't do a lot of we don't do any grappling, or aside from push hands, which is fairly safe. It's no impact. You're not allowed to use 100% effort in most scenarios, in terms of strength. So it's pretty non-confrontational for most people. But aside from that, there's not a lot of that element in my workshops. But in terms of my personal practice, I find myself happily well-equipped to deal with those kinds of scenarios where I'm facing confrontation or I'm facing, potential danger within a reasonable parameter, because I'm not trying to get severely injured at any point. It's never the goal. But I find that when there's risk, I tend to deal with it in quite a healthy way. And I think I would attribute that to the years of introspective practice that I've dedicated to narrative excavation. Tend to deal with it quite fluidly. I have my hang-ups like everybody else, but tend to move through them in a way that I feel satisfied with, I feel proud about. I can stand behind.
Are you going to start dancing again? Not right now. But
right now.
It's cool. But because with dance, I'm at... Well, Rach was trying to get in. With, it's not like I've locked her out. But anyway, with dance, I went to this workshop, a cacao ceremony, and it was great. But fucking hell, it was awkward. It was so awkward because I'm not used to dancing if I'm not drunk.
Okay.
And it was like, okay, let's all just start dancing. 9 a.m. in the morning, and the guys are doing all this stuff and they're singing all these songs, and I'm well out of my comfort zone.
Sure.
And I thought psychologically, what is actually stopping me doing this? Why am I so resistant to just being open with my movement and that type of thing? And is it something that when it comes to dance, did you face that challenge at all?
When I was younger, yeah, before I really had developed this introspective practice, for sure. But now I clearly see, when I was younger, I found dancing so confrontational and so awkward because I was worried. The main narrative there was that people are going to find me. It's going to be embarrassing for me. It's going to be an embarrassment. Because people will think that I'm unskilled, I'm uncoordinated, I'm awkward. They're not going to like what they see at all. And that kind of like harsh judgment Yayo thinks I'm a great dancer. And so that kind of judgment for me, and I think for a lot of men, is terrifying, that they're going to be perceived as incompetent and awkward in a physical way. That's like the worst for some people, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but now I see clearly whenever I enter those kinds of scenarios, because of my introspection practice, I see clearly this, I mean, to be clear, it happens at tremendous speed, these narratives, as they filter through your mind. It's almost like just, you know, unless you have a very sharp introspective blade, it's very hard to get in between them. It's very hard to even observe them at all. But they're happening in this sort of rapid succession, and they're all these fear narratives that just ramble off in your head in a fractions of a second, and they shift your mood immediately. But if you I should speak from when I find myself in a practice of noticing these narratives, I find it's much easier to recommit to the process of exposing myself and being awkward. And I mean, because I mean, let's not pussyfoot around the issue. People are going to judge you in those scenarios.
Yeah.
They are judging you. It's not like I'm not going to come here and tell you, like a lot of teachers will on Instagram and elsewhere, especially yoga teachers. They'll be like, nobody's judging you anyway. You should just express yourself. You know, just be yourself, because they're too busy looking at their phones anyway. Yeah, sometimes, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're judging you hard. They're looking right at you, and they think the worst thing you could imagine about you. Your worst fear that people are thinking about you, some people think that about you. And you have to confront that. You have to deal with that. And if you're equipped to notice how you react to those, if you're equipped to notice how you react to those narratives in real time, right? In like in the moment, in that rapid succession that they actually occur, then I mean you're far more equipped to actually, like I said, expose yourself and expose yourself in a dance setting.
Yeah. There you go.
Just take it out.
Yeah, and just see what
your
happens.
emotion. I mean,
yeah, it's a party, you know. Things happen, but it's something that, and it sounds daft. I was talking about two men talking about dancing and the fear of dancing, but
does it?
Does it? Yes, exactly. Why does it sound daft? But I find that I'm going to a wedding with Rach in August, and I haven't drank alcohol for 2 years. So I haven't never danced drunk apart from last Sunday at 9 a.m. I danced sober, shall I say. And I'm thinking, I'm going to go to this wedding, music's going to come on, and it's time for me to dance. You know, it's time. This is what the people want. Because I used to be a big dancer when I was younger, and when I had a big drinker as well. But I was the first person on the dance floor, and it's made me think, why am I becoming a prisoner in my own mind? Why am I letting this become more of an issue than it actually is? And as you said, expect that, no, people are going to judge you. They might think the worst thing, but maybe that's a reflection on what's happening in their mind, and it's like you have no control over that. So don't let that inhibit you.
I mean, it's up to you. You can let it inhibit what you're doing, and there's a reason that we do. Like these narratives that we have about ourselves, and these fear-based narratives, I'm alone, I'm not safe, and I'm bad, are there for a reason. Like we form those narratives in response to traumatic events so that we think we can navigate the future better in a way that's going to either mitigate or avoid those kind of traumas. We don't want to experience that same kind of pain again. And we think that believing in these narratives, believing that they're true about ourselves, is in some way, directly or indirectly, going to save us from having that same pain in the future. That's why they seem valuable to us. That's why we hold on to them. So they're not evil narratives. They're not some monster that exists in your mind. They're software programs that at one point you found useful, and at one point you installed because,
Sorry, brother. I'm giving Dev's... Give yourself a double chin, basically.
Am I good now?
Yeah, no, you're just a bit close to the mic. Sorry, man. These are very sensitive. At one point you were saying, brother.
Yes, I don't remember now.
Sorry.
No, it's
You're saying the response to traumatic events?
Yes, right. So I think, they're basically software programs that we installed at one point because we thought, okay, this is the best interface for me. This is the best interface with reality based on what I've experienced. And so allowing those fear narratives to modify your behavior and to be a motive for your decisions is smart in some ways. Like, actually, you should allow those fear narratives to be in the background as programs running. Like, for example,
for survival. Right?
Yes. Like, for example, when there's a real physical threat, right? And you're in a situation where you could potentially get hurt, or somebody you care about could get hurt. I'm not saying that these narratives are the enemy, but I'm saying that if you have a practice of observing when they're coming up and being able to assess, excavate, and then, give up your attachment to them if it's functional to do so, or if it's dysfunctional to keep believing in them, then that can definitely help you to move forward in those ways.
Yeah. Here's just a quick question. Do you believe in hypnosis?
I honestly don't know anything about it.
You've never been hypnotized? Never
been hypnotized, never. I mean, I don't have that much experience watching it either. I mean, I've seen, like, in high school you have some show, somebody comes to your gymnasium and does something, but that's all I've seen. I don't really know anything about it, honestly. Yeah. But yeah.
I think I just got to get to this party in August and just dance like an animal. Just go, because I love dancing, man. But it's, I got up my introspection game before then.
Yeah, I mean, some questions that you might ask yourself in that situation, or that I might ask myself if I were you, is like, first of all, I mean, so you mentioned, like, you haven't had a drink in 2 years and you feel like, that's going to be a situation where you will drink. One question that I would ask myself is like, okay, if I don't drink, am I making that mean anything about myself? Would that mean anything about me? Am I taking that personally, or making it mean something about my identity? Am I making that mean that I'm unsafe, that I'm bad, or that I'm alone in some way if I don't follow through with that decision? Am I choosing that? Am I choosing to drink based on a fear narrative? Or is it just something that I want to do based on my values? And is it connected to my values in some way, my highest values that are independent of those 3 fear narratives? That's one question I would ask myself. And number 2, it might be valuable to ask, like, okay, well, if I dance and things go horribly wrong, like the worst case scenario that I can imagine, like the worst thing that happens that I imagine would be the most traumatic for me. Okay, what does that mean for me? Am I making that mean anything about myself in terms of those 3 fear narratives? And how am I letting that modify my behavior? How am I allowing that to inform my behavioral traits and my moment-to-moment decisions? So yeah, that's based on what you said.
I'm gonna do like a post-wedding podcast as well to see how it went down.
Just download all of it.
Yeah. So we're probably hitting about an hour now. So let me ask you. Obviously.
Nope.
No more questions, please. Yourself and Yao Yao.
Like a Robert Downey Jr. style.
Yeah.
I'm done with this.
Exactly. Take the mic off.
Okay, you're rude.
So you've just moved to Bali. What's going to happen?
I imagine lots, man. I mean, for one thing, a lot of people speak English here.
Yeah, that's handy.
It is handy, and I've already, I found that, ironically, since being in China, my social skills have improved, and I'm more comfortable networking and making connections because I have a clear purpose now. So I find that one of the primary things that's going to happen here is just more connections.
More community. Yeah,
more community, more cooperation with people, doing big stuff, creating things, creating projects that are meaningful to the big picture of teaching and changing people's lives and through physical practice and introspection. So I think that's the big thing, man. And also, like, my friend Dom's coming here with Antoinette, his partner, and we're all going to be living together with my girlfriend in a villa. We'll be cooperating to create content. We'll be eating healthy together, cooking. He's a nutrition specialist, so we're all going to be, living an intentional, purposeful, healthy lifestyle together this year, and having some fun as well, exploring. But Bali is a phenomenal place. I'm looking forward to learning more about the local culture and more about their ideas here and about how things work, and a lot about the environment and because tourism is impacting the environment a lot, and just modern culture and the influence of modern culture is impacting the environment a lot. My girlfriend Yao Yao is very interested in environmentalism and learning how certain materials impact the environment, plastics, cardboards, so on and so forth, and how to deal with these problems, which is one thing I'd like to get more involved in the future as I start to raise more funds. And I don't know. I think it's going to be a great year.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to see what happens. So listen, thanks so much. This has been a
Absolutely.
pleasure.
Certainly has.
First ever recorded one as well, video recorded. So hopefully
nice.
people like the side of our face.
I hope my right side's good.
Cool, Dev. That's it, mate. Oh, by the way, before we forgo,
Yep.
you changed your Instagram handle.
Oh yeah,
So,
I did.
which is now?
Devin P. Kelley, Devin Kelley, stands for my full name, Devin Patrick Kelley.
Yeah.
Very Irish name for you.
It's a great name.
Yeah. Devin means bard.
Bard?
Yeah, it's Gaelic. It means bard or poet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Patrick, I'm not sure. I think it's not. I think it actually means like like some kind of royalty or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's originally Gaelic. Anyway.
And Kelly with an EY as well.
Yeah, Kelly with an EY. It's like that's more Irish, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
But anyway, so I changed it from DK Movement, Devin Kelley Movement, because I find that I'm addressing more subjects outside of the physical movement realm, and I often talk about psychology and introspective practice more often now. I didn't want to limit myself to that. I didn't want to limit my contributions to that sphere. So I just want to use my name. So I think it's better representation.
And you have no website, but
No website.
I would say, and this isn't a question, I would recommend you start one just for a blog, because all the content you write is so good, and I think it's wasted on for Medium, as in for Medium for Instagram, because you can't. It's hard to look back on it. It'd be nice to not to look at it on a desktop and read it like an essay, and I think it's definitely good enough for that. So that's not a question. I request that you start a blog.
Thank you. Well, that would be further down on the funnel for sure.
Okay.
The Instagram maybe would be kind of like the wide part of the funnel, and sure, that seems reasonable to me. But if I ever, for me, it's also about like what I feel compelled to do and what I feel is in my values to do in the moment. And sometimes for me, sitting down for hours and just like writing a long blog post doesn't seem attractive to me. But yeah, I mean, I write a lot on Instagram anyway, but
Devin, the most read blog in the world is Seth Godin's.
Who's that?
Seth Godin, he has the most read blog. He's basically a marketing marketeer, and he's like the thinking man's marketeer, and he has the most read blog in the world, and he sends an email out every day. He has an email every day, and the email is shorter than your his vlogs are as short as your Instagram posts.
Sure.
So they can just be short, that's what I'm saying. And then do that, and the next thing is a book.
Yeah, it's good advice.
Just saying.
Appreciate that. It may be appropriate at some time.
All right, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Cool. All right.
Woo! That's all we got time for. Yeah, it was good fun chatting to Devin. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you did, please leave me a review on iTunes. Or what's even better, actually, is to share it on your Instagram stories that you like the podcast, and then I'll repost it. That's always great to see. I'll leave you with our sponsors, Apparel, men's clothing brand that want to produce clothing for men and look after the environment at the same time. I wear their gear all the time. I really love their Voyager trousers, but they also do things like, I have the t-shirts, they do hoodies as well. If you just go to om.com/#TYLP, which stands for the Yoga Life Podcast, then you can check out all the clothing that they have. Put in the promo code Kevin at checkout, you get 15% off. That's promo code Kevin at checkout for 15% off. Finally, small changes. If you're in the Dublin area, small changes is a little shop making a big difference. I got to stop using that line, little shop, big difference. It just works so well. But I know the owner Paddo quite well. I go in there every week to get my veg and my bits and pieces. And they do loads of stuff there. I mean, I get my toothpaste in there, toothbrushes. Yes, which you're supposed to change every year, I believe, but who knows. But anyway, if you're in the Dublin area, go and check out Small Changes. You can find them online as well, smallchanges.ie. Feel free to tell them that Kev sent you. If you're looking to handstand and you're free on July 6th, come down to Heels Over Head, Yoga Hub, Castle Knock. If you're looking to become a yoga teacher or just deepen your practice, maybe come to my open day, or our open day, should I say, at Yoga Hub in Castle Knock on Saturday, July 27th. Free event, ask any questions that you like. All information can be found on kevinboyleyoga.ie. Thank you so much as always for listening. I really love doing this, and I'm very humbled and grateful that you take the time to listen to me and to become part of this little community that we're forming. So keep in touch, have a great week, catch up with you soon.